Nicola Willis billed it as the no BS budget, but its critics reached for other expletives.
They've buggered up the budget. That is a fact. This was a scramble without the lollies.
These people can't run a bath. They cannot run a bath.
Every Kiwi can know that this is a government that has their back.
Kia ora, ko Craig McCulloch aho, and e te pūrongo tōranga pū mō tēnei wiki. Welcome to Focus on Politics. To understand this budget, you have to understand the times, the gloomy outlook at home and the turmoil abroad, weeks of priming from the Prime Minister about ballooning debt and structural deficits. It's in that context the Finance Minister unveiled her second budget. Very much a budget of trade-offs.
Putting this budget together wasn't easy. It involved careful choices and restraint from all ministers. And that is as it should be, and as New Zealanders have the right to expect.
Careful choices and restraint. A budget which gives with one hand and takes with another.
This is not austerity. In fact, it is what you do to avoid austerity.
On the one side of the ledger, there is the promised boost for health, education, law and order and defence, and a new tax incentive for businesses too. On the other side, though, are the cuts to make it balance, what the government calls reprioritisations. And it's those that are likely to resonate with the public.
2 weeks ago, without any notice, the government of New Zealand ripped away pay equity from hundreds of thousands of workers.
Before the budget had even been revealed on Thursday afternoon, hundreds of protesters gathered outside Parliament to make clear their objections, furious at changes made to the pay equity regime, which, to quote ACT leader David Seymour, had saved the budget.
All of you here today, unions across the country here, with a fire in your belly.
And right now, they are preparing to introduce a budget, and that budget they have been able to balance because they are stealing money from the future pay packet of New Zealand's women. For shame!
The Coalition's pay equity pivot has been well canvassed over recent weeks. A surprise shake-up of the regime, lifting the threshold for workers to prove they're underpaid due to sex discrimination. At the time, ministers said the new scheme would be billions of dollars cheaper, but they refused to divulge the exact number until budget day. And so, unsurprisingly, there was keen interest in the budget lock-up, and Nicola Willis revealing exactly what that number was.
As a result of the law changes and the government's decision to remove the blank cheque for non-government employers, Budget 2025 returns $12.8 billion from contingencies over the forecast period.
$12.8 billion over 4 years. A fairly staggering sum, but the number means different things to different people. For the opposition parties and the unions, it demonstrates the scale of a robbery as part of what they call a reverse Robin Hood budget. That's $12.8 billion, they say, that would have otherwise gone to low-paid women workers.
This is the budget that will be remembered as the budget that left women out. This is the budget that said to working Kiwi women, they are worth less.
This is the trickle-down budget. This is the no-ambition budget. This is the ask the lowest paid working women in this country to pay the cost of your unequal economy budget. This is the let them eat cake budget.
Never in the history of this country have women been told work harder and get less. And yet that is what this government are saying.
Nicola Willis rejects that framing. In fact, she says the figure, $12.8 billion, demonstrates just how much the regime had blown out under Labour's watch. It had grown beyond its mandate, she says, no longer focused on just sex discrimination. She says the scheme, when set up in 2020, had been expected to pay out just $3.7 billion over this 4 years. But every year, she says, those projections grew and grew and grew.
These cost blowouts were hidden from taxpayers because the amount being forecast was negotiation sensitive.
For the same reason, she can't make clear the full scale of the blowout now, but she says the mere fact she's managed to claw back $12.8 billion, should give an indication. She stresses there's plenty still set aside for future successful pay equity claims.
No woman is having her pay cut as a result of this change. In fact, some women will have their pay increased through our pay equity regime. And the reality is that Labor still haven't actually worked out what their position is on the pay equity regime.
What is the Labor Party's position on pay equity? What is it?
I'm not going to make an apology for the fact that we believe, as a Labor Party, that women should not be being paid less than men.
The $12.8 billion sum does leave Labour's leader Chris Hipkins with a somewhat awkward question. If he's going to reverse the coalition's changes, as promised, then where's he going to find the money?
We're going to need to go through quite carefully before we can make commitments about how much extra money we will put into pay equity. But we want to ensure that women are paid fairly, and the current regime that they've legislated under urgency doesn't do that.
A difficult dilemma for Labour, but one for another day. The coalition has to deal with it now, as well as the consequences.
It has stolen our wages so they can pay for things like landlord tax cuts. It's disgraceful.
This is important. Budget day is important. We want to see the unification, the coming together of nurses, of all people in society that understands that this is justly wrong.
Honestly, you've taken money from hard-working women, everyday women who just want to pay for, car repairs and school camps and dentist trips so you can fund tobacco companies. It's disgusting.
The pay equity pivot is the largest of the budget trade-offs, but it's far from the only one. On top of the $12.8 billion recouped, the coalition has found an additional $8.6 billion in savings elsewhere through a series of nips and tucks to government programs. And no one escapes untouched. For most New Zealanders, the most notable change will relate to their KiwiSaver scheme, their retirement savings.
We've struck the right balance, a bit of cash, a bit of an incentive, but not so much that it makes KiwiSaver unsustainable in the longer run.
The changes are the most significant in a decade. For a start, the government's contribution is being halved. The most it will chip in every year is now only about $260, down from roughly $520 a year now. And in order to get that, workers still need to put in more than $1,000 themselves.
I do feel kind of cheated.
That's rubbish. Why are they dropping it? And they're handing money out to people that don't need it.
That's a rort.
Probably pull out of it now.
It's a good inducement if you're getting something for nothing from the government. It never normally happens.
Even though it's a small amount, it's still significant to some people, for sure.
Less money is never great, I suppose, but that's the world we're living in.
Those that earn more than $180,000 will now miss out altogether, no government contribution at all. In total, it saves the government about $2.5 billion over 4 years.
Let's be clear on that. For an 18-year-old just starting out, signing up to KiwiSaver, getting into the workforce for the first time, they have just seen $66,000 taken from their KiwiSaver balance on retirement.
Chris Hipkins, once again, misleading New Zealanders, scaremongering them that their KiwiSaver balances are going to decline. The advice is clear. KiwiSaver balances will be larger.
The reason Nicola Willis can argue that is because of other changes being made to KiwiSaver, also in this year's budget. While the government is dropping its contribution, it is lifting the contribution of both workers and employers. The default rate of 3% will be eased up to 4% by April 2028. Workers can opt to stay at just 3%, but only for a year at a time. And employers will have to match the new higher rate, though Treasury believes they will offset 80% of that cost by simply keeping wages lower. In short, most workers' KiwiSaver balances will end up higher, but mostly because they've had to put in more of their own pay packet.
I support greater retirement savings, but I don't support the government cutting investment in KiwiSaver and cutting the future retirement savings nest egg of all working New Zealanders.
I'm sorry, I know people like free money, but it's not free. Your kids will pay it back and it makes no sense. It's just good basic financial management.
One bit of good news for 16 and 17-year-olds, they will now be rolled into the scheme, meaning soon they will get both the government and employer contributions, which they don't right now. More trade-offs, give and take, a nip here, a tuck there. The Best Start child payment has been ratcheted back, now means tested across all 3 years instead of just the latter 2. Student loan repayments have been tweaked, with borrowers having to pay back more quickly. And the job seeker benefit is being tightened too. 18 and 19-year-olds will no longer be able to rely on that welfare if out of work and study. Instead, they'll first face a parental assistance test, with the expectation that their parents, not the state, support them if they can.
I think parents are going to welcome that policy, because I have met with the parents of young people who say to me, what am I meant to do to get my son off the couch playing PlayStation all day when the government just gives him a welfare check? How can I motivate him to get a job?
Just look at the cruel and callous decisions to punch down on young people who need income support.
Prepare to own your own life. Prepare to find a solution to your own problems. We are no longer going to pay you to stay on the couch or be on meth.
Another trade-off the public no doubt will have an opinion on.
Too easy for the young ones to get on the dole now. You know, they just think the government will pay for them.
Yeah, there's plenty of people out there can afford to pay and have the children. They'll be doing it up to this stage until they get a job, so why not now?
And if you choose to have your children, it's up to you to bring them up and pay for them, and it's what we have to do in our time.
Bit unfair on parents, I think. 18 and 19-year-olds are not children.
No, I was just thinking, gosh, you know, parents are getting relied on for everything these days.
To be penalised as a parent when my child is 18 or 19, they legally left home, they legally can do anything they want, I find it unfair.
The big risk for the government is that the cuts within the budget are more tangible than the new spending. And there is new spending. In fact, more than there is cuts. On average, the government has lifted spending by $6.7 billion a year, outstripping the $5.3 billion in savings. A large chunk of the new money, $1.7 billion, is for a new tax incentive for businesses, dubbed Investment Boost, the budget's supposed centrepiece.
We are utterly obsessed with economic growth, on making your life easier so that New Zealand can be an outstanding place to do business.
In simple terms, the new policy allows businesses to deduct 20% of the cost of new assets from taxable income on top of normal depreciation. That's new assets purchased in New Zealand or new and used assets imported from overseas. Think machinery, tools or commercial buildings, but not land or residential buildings. The idea is those businesses will be hit with a much lower tax bill in the year that they make that purchase.
Because from today, if you are a tradie, a farmer, a manufacturer, a small business owner, or another hardworking Kiwi actually wanting to invest in the future of the New Zealand economy, we're making it a little bit easier for you to grow your business. And I'll keep it real simple, because Investment Boost means cheaper tractors, it means cheaper utes, it means cheaper plant and equipment for manufacturers and winemakers and tourism operators and startups. It means fostering the investment New Zealand businesses need to lift productivity, to increase wages, to boost exports and to get more competitive, even more competitive on the global stage.
The initiative is one of the core reasons the government's nicknamed this the growth budget, though it's worth noting the Treasury thinks it will lift GDP by just 1% over the next 2 decades. Not exactly an overwhelming surge of growth. Regardless, the policy has found broad support, with even Labour on board and businesses enthusiastic.
You've got to have new machinery, and I guess that's a way to stimulate the economy, isn't it? It's going to help encourage people to invest in the business and, better services for people.
If we get more money back, it's a win, but it's not something that's going to make me go out of my way to purchase new equipment.
Yeah, something needs to happen. So businesses are struggling, and I think something like that might be positive.
The cuts in savings have also allowed the government to keep its promise to boost spending in health, education, law and order and defence, though much of it will go to simply keeping the lights on rather than new initiatives. There are a few crowd pleasers in there, a small lift to working for families and rates relief for seniors, funding to allow doctors to deliver longer prescriptions, and a sizable boost for learning support in schools.
It will make quite a significant difference.
It's going to give it the time needed to access the services that these kids need, which we've just not had.
And I see that this budget is recognising the potential for our very special children.
Nicola Willis had a message for her own children too, as she delivered her second budget as Finance Minister in Parliament's debating chamber.
To my own kids, sitting in the gallery today, I want to say that I know Mum's been busy lately, and I'm sorry I missed your show last night, Hatter. But your future, and the future of the next generation of New Zealanders, has been very much on my mind as we've put this budget together.
Yes, well done.
This budget will be good for you and for all our kids.
The question is, will voters agree? Will they thank the government for the caution, or will they curse the cuts? More to the point, come next year's election, will they feel better or worse off as a result of this budget? And who will they credit or blame for that? There is still one more budget to go before the next general election, but the fiscal conditions are unlikely to be much more forgiving. And next time, there won't be a pay equity scheme waiting to save the day. That was Focus on Politics. I'm Craig McCulloch. Thanks for joining me. Mā te wā.